Thanks for stopping in, everybody. So it's like 2 days after Thanksgiving, and here on Long Island, it's getting cold. I've noticed that the hoses are starting to freeze. Some water outside I see is starting to glaze over and do its little crinkly, crackly stuff. And I've been thinking about this guy out in the shed. Depending upon where you guys live, there still may be time. I don't know. Maybe it's too late, or maybe you can still go back out there. We need to deal with this pressure washer, and we need to winterize it. So we're talking about winterizing both the engine and the pump. I have a few things here to help you guys out. So let's take a look first at some of the products that I have, and then we'll talk about what my concerns are. Stay tuned. Okay, so we're just going to take a quick look at the products that I use. I use these every year, and also some of them throughout the year. So to start off with, I always start off with coffee, right? Because without that, I can't do anything. Now, every year throughout the season, usually, I don't know, I think it's like spring and sometimes in the fall, I'll buy, 20 gallons or so of fuel. And in these 5-gallon cans, I always put the correct mix, as per directions on the bottle with Stay-Bil, right? It's common. A lot of people like that. There's a lot of other variants for it. A lot of people say that it doesn't really work. Look, these things are short-lived. The idea of them is to buy a little bit of time, okay? Just as in the other video, I have some information that I was reading. It was actually on a Sunoco site about how 87 octane starts to deteriorate in about 3 months. 92 is much better because of the way it's refined. So when you're storing fuel, right, it's a problem you're going to have. It's going to start to go bad. And here on the island, all the water in the air, the alcohol is going to be pulling in that water. And that's what's really going to give us problems in our carburetor. So to buy a little time, I always start off with the correct amount of this. And now this is Lucas upper cylinder lube. And I always keep this around. I use it in everything I have. It's an upper cylinder lubricant. It also helps stabilize the fuel. And it's like nutrients. It's like vitamins, right? But we're going to go a little bit further than that. And I've got a little secret weapon here we're going to try out. A little bit, we'll talk about that. Also, I got some two-stroke. This is just an old container with some older two-stroke in it. But it's really the same thing as any of the two-stroke that you have. We're going to use a little bit of that too. We have to connect the hose to the pump, right? We don't want to damage the pump. So we're going to talk about how to deal with that in a minute. So I'll see you guys in a few minutes. All right, let's get started. Now, this is 10 ounces. I always mix everything up based upon like 10 ounces, just as a routine. This is about as much as I'm always willing to put into a lawnmower for testing purposes. Any less, and you'll probably never really cover the pickup in the tank. Any more is a waste. So if I need to add more later on because I've been running it for a while, that's fine. And now to get started, like I said, we're going to make a hot load, right? So maybe, a quarter of an ounce or so, a half an ounce, right? That's about a quarter. That's a lot. And keep in mind that there's also, this stuff is in my gasoline anyway. Same thing with my upper cylinder lubricant, because I put the recommended amount in the 5-gallon containers that I use. And this time I'm just going to squeeze, a healthy squeeze. A little bit of this, a little bit of this, and a little bit of this, right? Just a little bit. Now you could just stop right there or just use this, right? Two-stroke. That's all. We'll give it a good shake. We'll just shake it up. All right, let's go pour it in. Now we're going to go set up outside. It's really cold out and it's really windy. So I don't know if you guys are going to hear everything I say, but it's okay. I babble anyway, so you're probably not listening. All right, here's a tip. Throughout the year, right, I use a funnel. Well, no, this is a funnel. That's a filter, right? What did I say? This was a funnel and this is a filter? Well, actually, I didn't get that far. Yeah, I get confused. Okay, so I just use a filter, right? This is a paint filter, but you use a sock, one of those stupid masks, terry cloth towel. If you're going to use a sock, yeah, that might be foul. So there's all kinds of things you can use. But either way, right, throughout the year, it's just, for me, it's just a routine. Stuff gets in. If you don't let it get into the tank, because you're using something like this, then you don't have to get it out. We'll talk more about this when we go inside, because you're probably not going to be able to hear me well. And, it's cold. So I'm going to start it up and you're going to see what's going to happen. All right, switch on. All right, you saw how much water came out. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Now we're going to fog it a little bit with a little bit of chain wax and liquid wrench chain cable lube. Now we don't have to stall it, all right? Because we're going to leave some of this fuel in. It should be all right. I got to buy, 3 months maybe. That'll do it, and that leaves quite a bit in there to protect the carburetor and the valves. All right, we're almost done with the motor part of this. So what you saw me use was some common stuff that I keep around. Chain wax, which leaves a waxy coating, and that really was producing some blue smoke. And then a little thinner, right, which is my nice liquid wrench chain and cable lube, no sling formula. But it will kind of wax up, and that's what we want, right? We want a waxy type coating the inside of the carburetor through the intake port, right, to protect the aluminum from the oxidation of the atmosphere, the alcohol, the gases, combustion gases. Get in around the plug, get into the combustion chamber itself. Now this pump is actually starting to get warm. I can feel it because we let it idle. As long as there's water supplied to the pump, we are okay. You don't have to constantly be spraying with the wand or whatever. It'll help keep it cool. Pumps get really hot because of the compression going on in them. You're trying to compress, well, you can't compress water, right? So it acts like any other compressor or pump, just like the engine or anything else, but water doesn't get compressed. It can't be compressed unless it's into a form of a gas. So it works really hard, right? And that's why it gets really hot. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We don't want to burn the seals out. That's why we still need to keep some water going in the pump because it will get really hot. There is a blow-off valve. It's a temperature valve over here. And you may have even seen it when these pumps get hot, the thermostat opens up and it lets water flow through. So it protects your pump. Now, what you saw me initially do was start the engine up with any hoses on it because there's water in the pump. That is something that you can do, right? Depending upon the pump type, I was reading information on the manufacturer of one of the triplex pumps, the simpler ones, and I'll show some pictures here. Those pumps that are on the underside of a lot of the lawnmower engine style systems, they're pretty decent. And according to the area that I read in the white paper, it said it was rated for basically be able to run without water in it, right? I don't remember the exact language, but that's what I got out of it. Now, there are many different types of pump bodies and pump styles. So I'm not going to sit here and suggest that I'm like like the pump man, right? No, I do research though, and I try to know what I'm doing, and then experience is a thing. So my advice would be, don't do that. This pump here is a little bit different. I do it, and I do it for you saw how long I let it go for, very short period of time. What that does is it eliminates most of the water from the pump itself. That way, I don't have water sitting in there because water is just going to react with the environment and the aluminum. This is brass, so brass is less reactive. But if you've got an aluminum pump, it's going to oxidize. Aluminum pumps don't last, and it's really hard to get those going again when they get bad. Sometimes just you try to replace the seals and the valves that are in there, and sometimes they just don't come back. So that's why I'm saying you want to do this for a number of reasons. If water freezes, it'll crack the pump. But the water in there without some kind of lubricant or anti-corrosion inhibitor or something, over time you're not using it. The pump is just going bad. So let's pull the plug and we'll talk a little bit more about why. Now, again, these are things that I have laying around the shop. You could buy a fogger, it's a dedicated can of fogging oil. You could do that. But even like WD-40, although WD-40 is too thin, it's going to evaporate. So it's just not thick enough. It doesn't leave a coating. Things like PP Blaster, no, sometimes some of these, even like Coral, they have like acids in them and stuff. They're for breaking bolts loose. They're not really a lubricant, and they don't leave any good residual coating. Silicones, I would stay away from. You know, I use this stuff, right? It's in my shop, and it probably should be in yours, all right? Let's move to the next step. All right, you see the plug? See how wet it is and how dark it is? Yeah, that's good. Okay, that means that we've really coated everything. Now, that should burn off when we go to start it next year, but if you really want to get it started, replace the plug after you start it and run it for a little bit. If you really have a hard time starting it, replace the plug, but you shouldn't. And then if you want, okay, you could put some of this, your chain wax in here, right, into the plug hole, and, you know, give it a little bit of a squirt or two. We'll pull it over, all right, with this, the pull starter. I'm going to leave the plug out for now because we're going to move to the pump next. All right, it's time for the pump. Now I got a little secret weapon here, but we're not gonna use this first, right? What is it, Arj? Well, it's pressure washer pump protector, and I'll give you guys a little closer look. See, look. What is it, Arj? Well, it's kind of neat. All right, so this part here, and we're going to use it in a minute, but we're not going to do this right away. I got something else cooking, and it's pretty cool, and I have a use for it after we use it. So stay tuned and you'll find out more about that. All right, here's the setup. I got a length of hose. All right. It's male on one end, female on the other, but that doesn't matter, right? Don't worry about this end. This is the end you're worried about. I just use this kind of hose for adapting to a bunch of different things. You could take an old garden hose, cut a section off. You just need the male end. Now, on most of these, right, you would just thread it right into here. But I want to show you guys that I don't have that, right? I have this thing here. It's and I'll give you a closer look at it in a minute. It's a quick disconnect. All right, goes on there. So just so you guys know, you can buy these on Amazon. I like the brass ones. I've tried the plastic ones. They suck. It's got a gasket in there. All right, it's nothing fancy. And you thread it on. This would be, let's say, for example, this is your garden hose. You thread it on here. And you're done. Okay, so we'll just get a little closer look at that in a minute. Now, another little tip I'll give you guys. You probably have seen it outside. There goes the heat. Oh, I got to shut the heat off. Hold on. I'll be right there. All right, this is a valve that you can get at, you know, Depot, General Hardware, whatever. These are kind of neat. All right, so what I would normally do, now this valve's kind of crap because I replaced it, but you would just, in this case, in my case, I would just thread this on here, right? And then this end goes on the hose. I'm going to leave it on for us for right now. And so what's nice about this is when you put it on here on the pump, right, you have a way of shutting off the water stream. So when you want to restart your machine, you can, what I do is I grab the wand, machine's off, it's got pressure in the pump. It'd be really hard to start then. So when the machine's off, I pull the pressure out of the pump, then I shut the valve. This way you don't keep, you know, because a lot of times the hoses leak and that water will keep going into the pump and it'll be hard to start the pump. And as soon as the pump starts, I turn the valve on. Now disregard for a moment that I have this in place, right? Because if you guys don't have it yet, and like I said, you can get it at Amazon, in a lot of places. And again, get the good one. This is just a reducer, okay? It's this one here. I have a lot of this stuff. Now, there's other ways to make this, and I'm going to show you another way in a minute, but all this is an adapter and a reducer, all right? Now, on the brass one side fits the hose style, right? Because it's a coarse thread, it's a different pitch. Don't ask me what it is. I don't remember. But this side is what, like 3/4 NPT. I believe that is, right? So this is just reducer. I'm not going to put any thread dope or anything on there, but this comes down to, what is this, 1/4 or 1/8? Again, I forget. It doesn't matter, right? Why doesn't it matter, right? Because I'm going to show you what we're going to do with it. I'm going to put that on there like that, okay? And there's my blowgun. All right, so I'm going to go get like a little cup or a tray or something. It's going to go all over the place, so I might as well just show you guys. Let me put this on. This is not really high pressure. This is, I got 2 lines coming in here. So I got one that I always blow carburetors with and all that, and that ranges between 14 and maybe 30 PSI. So we're going to need the full pressure. What you can do is blow everything out, right? So get a rag. See all the water? Now I already emptied this, okay? Okay. See how much water still comes out? So if there's ways to drain it. It depends upon the style of pump, but you can see how much water's coming out. You can do this outside. Don't worry about it. You're not going to blow any seals or anything. This is about 125 PSI. Keep in mind that the hose pressure is probably around 40 or so. So I'm just going to pull over the engine real quick just to move the pistons around. That's why I have the plug out. Give it another blow. Inside there's valves and all that. And the stuff gets stuck. Water gets stuck and everything behind. This is kind of important to do before we do anything else, because you can do it with the Stay-Bil pump protector. It will put pressure in and blow out this way. That's what this is for. All right. So if you don't have an air hose, you can still use this product. Now we're not quite ready to use this product yet. Also, I'll show you another little tip in a bit. But we're going to move to the next step. Now, my air hose has a rubber end on it, right? You can make up a rubber end. Tape will work. It kind of fits in here as well, right? See? Online on Amazon, they actually sell a fitting that goes right into the hose. It's got a barbed end on it. It's got a couple of different ends on it. You can just hook up an air hose right to it and let it run for 20 minutes or so. It's the same thing that your sprinkler guys do at the end of the year, right? At the end of the season, they connect pressure to it and they just let it run for a little while and get all that water out so that nothing can accumulate, expand when it freezes and damage stuff. So I'm just going to go a little bit longer with this. And every now and then, pull over the engine. Okay, now we're about ready to take it to the next step. Okay, so I've set up another routine for us, right? So I have the hose and the valve, and I've got a funnel, and I've got this is some used antifreeze. I recommend antifreeze because it has corrosion inhibitors in it. It's not just a matter of protecting the pump from freezing, but whatever water's in there, the junk in the air, right? All the ozone in the air, you got oxygen, right? You got water vapor, you got metal. And the brass pumps do better. I've mentioned this before. They do. They don't oxidize as bad or as much. The aluminum pumps, they go bad, right? And I'll show you guys a pump that is most common. This one's a little less common. There's a little bit more on the semi-professional, professional, commercial end, right? But there are other pumps that are a little bit more common. Your pump might look like this, and it usually sits underneath the engine. It's a lawnmower style, right? These are actually pretty good. Three pistons, basically, is what runs this. And they'll be sitting underneath. Now, to do this, right, you could, on this style, you could, most of the time, you could turn the pump upright like this, and you could pour stuff in a lot easier because you can usually put those machines on their face. But this machine, I've tried it, you try to turn it over, And what happens is the oil comes out of the pump, the fuel is coming out all over. It's going to make a big mess. It's not worth it. So we're going to do it like this. Now, you could use RV, right? If you're concerned about the environment. We're not going to be, this stuff isn't that poisonous. They say, well, deers drink it and everything. Oh, well, how much are you putting on the ground, right? You make a lake. So if there's any puddling or whatever you work on your car or whatever, I remember years ago, people would just let it drain into the street, and then I suppose a dog or something or another animal would lick it. But if you rinse the area well, it's not going to be a problem. It's not poisonous. They used to say years ago is the solution to pollution is dilution. There is some truth to that. So what we're going to do now is, so we get the plug out, all right? This valve is shut, but I'm just going to start by putting a little bit of, it's going to be a bit messy, so get your rags. I'm going to put a little bit in here to get started. We'll sort of fill up the tube. And it takes a while because of the air, right? There's really no place to go. Let me turn this valve on. We're going to let it sort of fill up the hose. I'm going to try to move this whole column of fluid into the pump. At some point, we're going to want to turn over the pump, and we'll pull the pull starter and turn over the pump a little bit. See, it's still sucking in. There we go. I think it's just about full, right? We'll try sucking some of it in. Once we see it come out the top, we should be all right. Mostly we just want to kind of pull it in as far as we get. See, there it goes. Okay. Well, do that. That's it. Get my rag down. They say it's easy to do outside. Yeah, you could just do this and leave it. And then if you really wanted to, right, you could then take your air hose and blow this back out. Now, of course, this is all much easier outside. It's a little bit nicer today, so I should be doing it outside. But here in the shop, where it's a controlled environment, where I could set the cameras up and leave them, I want to show you this. So I'm going to pull this through a little bit more, and I'm going to go to the next step. I'm going to turn my valve. And that's why I got the valve. So now I can drain this hose. All right. And that's it. All right. Now, so you can pull it a few more times just to get out whatever's in there. I think we measured this when I was doing the van. This is from the van, so it is older antifreeze, but this is clean. It had something like 200 something degree Fahrenheit protection and for temperature, and I think it was like -10 or something. So it's close enough. If you want, you can use pure antifreeze, full strength. But if you happen to have, like I do, some older stuff around, there's nothing wrong with doing that. We're going to move to the next step in a minute. Now, if you want, you could blow this out and get any of the residue, and I think I will do that in a minute. I'm just going to go like this with lower pressure air. Now I don't need the high pressure. Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to go clean up. But wait, there's more. Okay, everybody, it's time. All right, it's time for, this is Stay-Bil's version, pump protector. But Briggs makes it, lots of people make it, and I just happened to pick this one up. It's about $10. During the season, the end of the season now, right, and a little bit earlier, maybe a month or two ago, you'll probably see it at Depot, Lowe's, whatever, some of the hardware stores. It will eventually disappear off the shelves, but you can get it at Amazon and anything at any time. And it's probably one of the best things that we can use, right? So I'm going to hook up my hose adapter to it. All right, we're ready for the secret weapon. Okay, so I got the can shook. I lift the top protecto plate off. And again, you're going to be threading it directly in. Now, hopefully this will make up. If not, then I'll have to take my little adapter off because it looks like the threads are cocked. So he said it. Yeah, it does look like the threads are cocked. Let's give it a squirt and see what happens. Yep. See what I mean? Now, it's actually starting to come out here. So this has a lot of pressure. They say just basically till you get, there you go, see? It is leaking a little bit. That's it, just till it comes out the top. But because we have all the product in here, right? It's not a big deal. And yes, it is a little bit cross-threaded, but you can see a lot of the materials coming out. It's an oil. It's an oil, and it's also something to displace the water. And this way you have something that will protect the pump properly. I'm just going to let it, you know, drizzle a little. Pull over the engine. And that's it, we're done. All right, gonna let that drip for a minute, and I'm gonna clean up, and we'll be right back.
A few moments later.
Now, one last tip, guys, on the Stay-Bil, or whatever one you have, when you're done with it, you can take this tube off. You can then put this thing into your hose area and use your air pressure hose nozzle, whatever you got, you know, preferably a rubber tipped one, but you can take this off, put this into your hose connector, and on this end here, right, you got your air pressure, hook your air pressure hose up to it, or your gun, and blow away, right, evacuate the system out. So if you don't want to make some kind of complicated thing, or, you know, whatever, this is $10. This should last a long time. Now, this one cross-threaded a little bit on me, but if I clean up the threads, it should be fine. Maybe yours will be fine. Maybe this one's just defective. I mean, it's cheap. So there's still some in here, right? There's probably enough left for another pump or the next year. Put it away. Use it next year. You shouldn't need much more, especially if you evacuate the pump first with some air pressure. You'll probably get at least 2, maybe 3 uses out of this, all right? So, guys, these things are expensive depending on what system you have. This is a very expensive machine, really. Anything with a pump like this, 2700 PSI, or an axial, something that's a little bit more commercial, they're going to be a lot more expensive. And hopefully this was helpful. I'll see you guys on the next one. Don't forget to get out there. It's not too late. If you haven't ruined the pump yet, you probably will. So get out there and take care of it, and I will see you guys soon. Okay, Mr. Pressure Washer. I'll see you next year. All right, it's actually snow raining out, and it's away, and I'm all done. So now I don't have to think about it.